Hello and welcome to your presentation on restaurant pricing. So, how should a restaurant determine pricing, prices for their menu items? So, there's a few different approaches here. You could just set a restaurant price, right, and just go with it and just hope for the best. More often than not, that's not going to help you. So, some factors before we even get into numbers that we have to think about are the following. So, right away, the economy. The economy can have a huge effect on what type of pricing you decide to put on your menu items. If there's a really strong economy, you can actually set your prices a bit higher. If inflation continues, if people continue to make more money, things are costing more for you as a restaurant owner, you have to charge slightly more. However, in a downturn of an economy, such as we had in 2008, 2009, and so did the United States, you'd have to be careful. And you saw many restaurants start to have to drop their prices slightly to continue to get people to come in. Such restaurants as McDonald's, your quick service restaurants, started offering value menus, and those really thrived. So your pricing can be decided just based on the economy. Your local competition can actually help you set your menu prices as well. If you have similar items as a restaurant that you're going to be competing with close by, you want to make sure that you're either close to their prices, or if you're going above their prices, you have to create more value for that price. If you're going below their prices, you have to make sure that you're still staying within your food cost percentage that you need to. Okay? So you really have to be careful with how you approach it, but your competition can kind of help guide you towards your pricing. For service level, the higher the service level, the more people are usually willing to pay. So when you think about McDonald's and you order at one of their new kiosks, you may just you're expecting to have to pay less for your meal. When you go to a fine dining restaurant, because the service level is white tablecloth, polished cutlery, you're expecting to have to pay more. So you can play with your pricing based on what service level you have. Guest type. Depending on which type of guest you're going to get, they're going to be either more willing to pay more or not willing to pay more. So different types of guests are they're basically more acceptable towards higher prices. Really depends on your income, right? So it depends on who your customers are, and you can start to set your prices based on who you're targeting. So if you're targeting students, high prices may not be the way to go. If you're targeting baby boomers, people that are in their 50s or 60s, older professionals, maybe you can offer a bit more as far as your price. Your product quality. So the higher quality you end up going with food, likely you'll have to charge a bit more because you'll want to stay within a food cost percentage. So the higher quality, usually you can charge a bit more for that. So your pricing can be based on that as well. Your portion sizes, so if you offer more, bigger portion sizes, that should come into play as well. So if you're offering more for your guests, again, it really goes back to that value. Okay? What are you getting for how much you're paying? So if you're providing bigger portion sizes, you can probably charge a bit more. Okay? The ambiance of your actual restaurant. If you think of something like a Keg or a Moxie's, very good, it's good food, but really their ambiance really sets them apart. So it's the way that you feel when you walk into that restaurant. It's darker lighting. You feel like you're in a bit of a higher level restaurant. And because of that, you're able to actually charge more. Ambiance could also be if there's something attached to the restaurant itself. Let's say you've got entertainment within it, and it's creating a certain feel that you get only in that place. You can charge a bit more. A perfect example is Lone Star. The ambiance that the kind of feel that they get that customers get when you walk in there is like they try and make it feel like you're in Texas. It's a different feel, so they're able to charge a bit more because it's a unique ambiance. You want to be careful with meal periods as well when you're deciding prices. So breakfast, lunch, dinner, but mostly between lunch and dinner, you could start to play with, back to these portion sizes here, reduce portion sizes and reduce prices for certain times of days. People are typically they're more likely to spend a bit more at dinner than they are at lunch. So you have to be aware of that when you're setting your prices. Meals on your menu that may be ordered more at lunch, you may want to be careful with how you're pricing them. And then this is a big one. First, location. So location would obviously help. So depending on whether you've got a really great location compared to a negative location, you can start to charge slightly more. If you go down to the Bayard market and ask for a beer during the summer, compared to ordering a beer out in the suburbs, it's very likely that you can get two different prices there. And then lastly, this is the big one, and that's sales mix. So sales mix is really a mathematical way of evaluating the popularity of each menu item. And the more popular an item is, the more likely you'll be able to increase the price without having any negative effect in demand. So people will still order it. So it's a very important thing that people look at, is just, what are you selling the most of? What are you selling the least of? And in another video, you'll see how sales mix can be used to analyze a menu. So once you figure out what your pricing should be, so you want to look at all of these factors and take them into account and play around with your pricing a bit. Can you just increase prices as you go? Well, you have to be very careful if you just increase prices as you move forward. If you start to increase prices too quickly, you could start to affect something that we call demand. Okay, so are you actually going to affect how many items will be ordered? So really it goes back to that sales mix, where if a menu item is very popular, you can try and increase your pricing to make a bit more money. But what if it has a negative effect and people start to get turned off? Okay? You see some restaurants have run into this, especially lately, when they had to increase prices due to the fact that they had increased labor costs. So some people have started eating out less at some restaurants because they've gotten too expensive. So how can we actually evaluate whether or not a price change can be positive or negative? Well, it's very simple. If you go to your video lecture Excel sheet, you'll see on the right hand side this example. So let's say you own a restaurant and you normally sell about 100 burgers. It's one of your top sellers and it's $13.49. So for the week, you're typically making 100 burgers times $13.49, right? So you're making $1,349 in weekly revenue just from burgers. Okay, so that's great. So you think to yourself, maybe we should put it up by $1 where it's so popular. So you think to yourself, 100 times $14.49. Well, I could make $100 more dollars just by increasing my prices by only $1. This is great. Okay, so when you think about it, that's $5,200 at the end of the year. That's $5,000 more dollars. This is great. I'm happy. But what if this $1 turned off just 10 customers? 10 of your customers decide, oh, well, what was this one price increase? An extra $1. I know it may sound, this is a bit extreme, where $1 may be a bit too much, but some people are very price sensitive. So what if it does happen and only 90 burgers start to get ordered because of this new price? Okay. Now, because we increased our pricing without being too careful, we've negatively affected the demand, which is how much people are ordering at a new price. So we're making $45 less in weekly revenue. So now we've actually negatively affected. So while increasing pricing it needs to happen for restaurants due to inflation, due to labor costs, many other factors like that, how restaurants go about it, they need to be very careful. Through when the minimum wage was increased recently, what you saw was the bigger chain restaurants, as soon as the news came out that this was going to be an increase, they slightly started to increase pricing every single quarter. So when they came out with a new menu or new items, they would release a new menu and they would increase things by 50 cents at a time. 50 cents at a time, leading up to, at one point, you would have seen about a $2 increase, $3 increase on many items, but because it was so gradual, not as many people noticed. Okay? Those restaurants that waited and then had a huge increase right out of nowhere, that's when you affect demand even more. Okay? So if we go back to our presentation, so there are different approaches to pricing. So we've talked about the factors that affect pricing. We've talked about just price increases, but we also need to make sure that we are really careful with how we're pricing it based on mathematics. Okay? So you can actually take, you can actually take a marketing approach to it, where your pricing is used as a communication tool. High pricing would typically mean we are going after people who have a high income, professionals. We do not want people who have a lower income. Okay? You can do that with pricing just like you can do that with ambiance and really target specific people. You can do family deals with pricing, and now you've communicated who you're going after. Okay? Really the thing you have to be careful is making sure that you set your competitive position. So you're positioning yourself while still making sure that you have enough people coming in. Okay? You always have to make sure that if you're using your pricing as a marketing tool, that you actually have enough people coming in. You've identified a group of customers that will continue to come in. Okay? And that's why it's careful to use pricing as a communication tool. Food cost percentage and item contribution margin are the two that most restaurants like to go with. Okay, so let's take a look at the food cost percentage approach. So before we start, this is the costing triangle is what it's referred to. Okay? The C at the top is cost in dollars, C in percentage is cost in percentage, and SP dollars is selling price. So you can have only two of these three, and through the costing triangle, if you can remember this, you can actually discover the third element. Okay, so if you have cost in dollars and cost percentage, well, because one is on top of the other, you can divide your cost in dollars by your cost percentage, your desired cost percentage, and you'll get your desired selling price. Okay, if you only have your cost percentage and your selling price, and you want to know what type of cost you can actually have, you'd go your cost percentage times your selling price. That would give you your cost in dollars. And then lastly, cost in dollars divided by selling price would give you your cost percentage times 100, of course. So you need two of these three, okay, to be able to use the costing triangle. Now, typically how this happens is we develop a recipe. Okay? In the kitchen, the chef develops a recipe and he costs it out. Okay, so he goes through every single ingredient and he discovers how much each item costs. And then he'll divide it by a desired food cost percentage. So if you think back to your income statement analysis, the common size percentage for food costs, that's that food cost percentage. So a desired one could be something like 32%. Okay, so you find out how much it is. We would like a 32% desired food cost. That'll give you roughly what selling price you should offer. Okay? And then another option is the cost factor approach, using cost percentage, where you simply go 1 divided by that cost percentage and it gives you a factor. We'll go through both examples using Excel again. So if we take a look at, we'll zoom out a bit, pardon me. This is just a wine bar, okay, $6 or more per bottle for wine cost. If it's a bottle at $6 or more, they want an 18% cost percentage. If it's less than $6 per bottle, they want 15%. So they've got glasses per bottle, cost per glass, target cost percentage. So what we need to find out here is by the glass costing. So we've got desired selling price, suggested menu price, and the actual cost percentage. We're going to find out first the desired selling price. And if you remember the costing triangle, okay, I have my cost in dollars and I have my desired costing percentage. I'm looking to find this out. So if I have these two, I can go cost in dollars divided by cost percentage, right? So my cost in dollars, my 152 divided by my 0.18, which is my 18%. And that's going to give me, there you go, one too many zeros. So it's going to give me $8.44 is what I should be charging for this glass, because it cost me $1.52. If I want an 18% beverage cost in this case, I need to charge $8.44. Okay? If we do the next one, we go $1.29 divided by 0.18, okay, 7.17, and then this is a wine bottle that costs less than $6. So we go our $1.02 divided by 15%. Now, this would be based on these cost percentages, but you don't see too many restaurants charging these types of prices. So $8.44, you would probably bring that to $8.99. $7.17, you could go to $7.49 or $7.99. Yeah, we'll go $7.49. And your $6.80 could be $6.99. And you know what? You could just go $7.99 to be consistent across the board here. And now these look more like the restaurant menu pricing you'll see. Now, because we've rounded them up to make them look attractive on a menu, more consistent, well, what's happened to our cost percentage? If we take a look again at, we now have our cost in dollars. Okay, we still have that. But we have our new price, our new desired selling price. We don't have our cost percentage. So if we divide our cost in dollars by our selling price, we should be able to get our actual cost percentage. So if we go our $1.52, which is how much this glass costs, divided by my new price of $8.99. Oh, look at that. I now have 17%. So I've brought down my cost percentage for that glass every time I sell that glass. And then if we go $1.29 divided by $7.99, again, we've brought this down. And now what was my target cost percentage? I've brought it down slightly because I can play a bit more with my pricing. $1.02 divided by $6.80 or $6.99 and 14.6. So we would typically start with this process first to find out our desired selling price, use a bit of marketing to decide what we'd like to do, okay, with these. Now we could go $6.99 here instead of $7.17, but then this cost percentage would be higher than our target. Okay, so it's basically good practice to just always go up in price here after you figure out your desired selling price. Your pricing factor approach is quite similar but a bit different. So we would start off by going 1 divided by your desired product cost percentage. In this case, it's food cost, so 0.32. This gives me a cost factor of 3.125. Some restaurants will simply just discover this factor. It's 3.125, 3.125, 3.125, 3.125. And then simply multiply your cost for each item times that factor to discover your selling price. So $4.50 multiplied by 3.125, I should sell this item for $14.06. 4 times 3.125, $12.50. And then you would simply go across your menu and do it that way. It's essentially the same approach. You'll get the same numbers. It's just a different approach to doing kind of the same thing. Okay? So those would be the two approaches that you would see. Now these would be pre-rounding selling prices, so we typically probably go, okay, so $14.99. This would probably go to $12.99. Okay, so, and the reason why we go $14.99 as opposed to $15, this is a marketing tool. Okay, this is just you have the effect that you're more looking at a $14 dish instead of a $15 dish. Even though it's only 1 cent, you see the 14 and you don't see 15, which is a big thing. All right, so that would be how you go about deciding pricing. So we've got through the factors that you want to consider, but then you also definitely want to look at the math aspect of it to make sure that you're pricing items properly. Okay, and then there's also contribution margin approach. So contribution margin is the amount that's left over when you subtract your item cost from your selling price. Okay, it's your gross profit margin basically, but really for each item, what you end up doing is what your contribution margin is the money that's left over every time you sell one item. It's the money that's left over after you've covered the costs that can now go towards helping all other expenses within the restaurant. Okay, so that's what we end up kind of getting with your contribution margin. So how it's used once you have a desired contribution margin for each item is you find out the item food cost again in dollars, and you add your desired on item contribution margin, and that will give you your item selling price. Okay? Typically, if someone does use this type of approach, you're going to see a different item desired item contribution margin for different areas of the menu. Okay, so your entrees may have a higher desired item contribution margin compared to your appetizers, and your desserts may be slightly lower than both of these. This practice isn't used as much because it doesn't take into account as much the popularity of items, and how you can play with popularity to change your pricing as well. So which is better? At the end of the day, there's something we refer to as price-value relationship. There's no perfect approach, and all three approaches are used. The food cost percentage approach is used quite a bit, but the most important factor is the price-value relationship. When you are setting a price, you want to make sure that whoever your customer is, whoever you have decided you are going after, that they see value in what they are purchasing from you. Okay? And that's the most important part of setting prices in restaurants.